Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Right to Speak workshop series. My name is Xabiso Vili. I will not be showing my lovely face this evening. However, you'll definitely get to see the lovely faces of our facilitators tonight. I am 1/3 of Hear My Voice, and we are a nonprofit organization focused on creating open and uncensored spaces for poets from South Africa. One of our main projects is taking South African voices to the world and bringing the world's voices to South Africa. We are co-facilitators and co-partners in an amazing project called Right to Speak, which is a unique funded initiative that highlights spoken word as a way to engage youth voices in Africa and Europe around issues of human rights and social justice. It is organized by the Goethe Institute in South Africa, partnering with us, the Center for Creative Arts, the General Representation of Flanders, Wallonie-Bruxelles International, and the Institut Français in South Africa. And this is a project that has been taking place since early March this year and will run up until October. Since earlier this year, we've had multiple events such as online performances, and this is now a workshop series that is being produced by the Center for Creative Arts and Hear My Voice around brand identity, around financial readiness, around proposal writing. So we're really just trying to give poets the all-rounder in how to become a business, how to know your value, how to charge, how to just create work and content that can be consumed locally and internationally, and make yourself ready to be exported to the world. Today we have some amazing speakers that will be speaking on the topic of brand identity. We have Xabiso Vili, who's known amongst the poetry circles, but not only that, he's been a part of some amazing online digital strategy initiatives, and he will give you the lowdown and his full bio, which is very much extensive, well-traveled, and we saw it fitting that he be here today to share his knowledge on brand identity, as he does it so well. And we also have Shakirah Dramat, who is a founder of that network, and it is an amazing PR and communications company, which has worked with a lot of big clients from corporate as well as artists as well. So she does a whole lot of work in bringing artists and corporate together. That's why we thought she'd be perfect to facilitate this workshop today. So yeah, I will stop blabbing and I'll give Xabiso Vili the floor in order to take it away with his presentation. And at the end of the presentation, both presentations, we will have an opportunity for you to ask some questions to the panelists. If there's anything that you want to know or further get details about in terms of their presentations. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Xabiso, you can take it away.
Magic. Thanks so much, Ishmael. Thank you, Hear My Voice, and thank you, Right to Speak. It's a really exciting program. Yeah, and I'm so happy to be with you all today. Yeah, so I am Xabiso Vili. I'm a writer, I'm a performer, I'm a producer, I'm a new media artist, and also a graduate of Digify Pro, which is run by Digify Africa. I think I saw them in the room this evening. Yeah, and so I'll just be, I wonder if I can, yeah, let's hide that. I'll just be, yeah, talking to you about brand identity today, but really in particular, what I'm looking at is the theory around the golden thread. And then we'll have Shakirah jump in a bit later once I'm done to chat a little bit about the practical side of implementing brand identity strategy. So let's talk about the golden thread. What is the thing that links all your work together to create a coherent narrative of all the work you've done? When you look at your, what does it create of you? There are many courses that can teach you how to go about building your brand identity. Google has a free course on digital marketing. Meta has their Facebook Blueprint courses, some of which are free, some of which you pay for, but also, as I said, Digify Africa, of which I'm a graduate, has the Digify Pro program, a 3-month intensive incubator that can get you a Facebook marketing certificate and community manager certificate if you get accepted. And of course, Shakirah is going to be telling us a lot more about the gears, the nitty-gritty of what, of how to go about building this brand identity. And so today, I'm not necessarily interested in the how, but I'm interested in the what. The what are you marketing? What is your brand identity? Once you are proficient in paid ads and social media schedules and figuring out how to run a campaign, what are you sharing with this infinite, almost infinite audience that exists online and offline? I have many poets that jump into my DMs and they ask similar questions around how to become a popular poet, or where can they share their work, or how to go about publishing. And really, I think the energy of the question remains the same. They're asking, how do I get my name out there? I could tell them the tried and tested, go to open mics, read, write, edit, submit for publication, share the work, create videos, upload, have a campaign plan, but the answers are really specific to what you're trying to accomplish. And every poet's journey is just so intrinsically different. So I think it is important that we ask ourselves, what are you trying to accomplish? So let's do an exercise really quickly. I can't see y'all, so I'm gonna just imagine you're doing this exercise. You can close your eyes if you want to. And as you're closing your eyes, I want you to think of your wildest dream, that thing that makes your heart go boom, boom. I want you to take that dream. Once you have it, I'll give you a second to get that dream. Once you have that dream, I want you to times it by 10, right? So it's getting larger. It's quite frightening, honestly, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to take that dream that's been times by 10, and then we're going to times it by 100. Now it should be like jumping right out of your chest, right? Napo Mashiane has a poem, and in it she says, your dream dreams of you. Your dream dreams of you. So that dream that you just multiplied is dreaming of you. For every 10 steps you take towards it, it takes 1,000 steps towards you. You're the only one possible to bring that dream into existence. But how can this idea of this dream and this poem help us with finding the golden thread? How can finding the golden thread help us with creating a brand identity? So I want to use my own journey as an example really quickly. I remember I said that every poet's journey is different. So throughout this session, feel free to pick things that work for you and leave those that don't. But starting with my journey more than 10 years ago, when I asked myself this question of what is my greatest dream? I sat down and made a list of steps that would lead me to it. It came out looking like a vision board with short-term, 1 year, mid-term, 2 to 5 years, and long-term goals, which were about 5 to 10 years. One thing was clear for me at that time, for me to be able to achieve my greatest dream, my name, my brand, Xabiso Vili, a lot more weight. I needed to be able to walk into a boardroom, put my name on the table and have the table crack and break just a little. I needed leverage. So how did I go about gaining this leverage? Similar to many other poets, I went on the natural or the well-known route. I featured on open mics, I performed in slams, I sent poems to publications, I had one-man shows that toured, I had showcases, I had an album, international tours, speaking engagements from Hello Ambassador to the TEDx. If I say it in a list, it all sounds like very easy, like one came after the other. But I was focused, dedicated, committed, and worked hard at producing quality material. But what always stood out for me was that it was never just about the poem or the showcase or the book. These were all part of a greater whole. These were the short and midterm goals necessary for the ultimate dream. Achievements allowed me to achieve greater and get closer to the dream. I want to take Napo Mashiane's quote a bit further. Yes, your dream dreams of you. Your dream dreams for you. At the 13th Steve Biko Annual Memorial Lecture delivered by Professor Ben Okri at UCT on the 12th of September in 2012, Okri said in his speech that the value of mountaintops is not to live on them, but to see from them, to see into the magic and difficult distances, to see something of the great journey still ahead, to see, in short, the 7 mountains that are hidden when we climb. I think when he says this, he suggests that we are on a journey and climbing a mountain. The peak of the mountain is not the end of the journey. Rather, when you reach the top, this is a place of respite, a place of rest. But also from this great distance, you can see all the other mountains that need climbing, all the other dreams your dream has been dreaming for you. So after years of cultivating my proposal writing and building my bio and receiving rejection letter after rejection letter, my bio grew large enough, which allowed me my first funding of 42,000 Rand to create a poetry augmented reality exhibition, turning talented individuals into ancestors. This led to a 10,000 euro commission for a projection mapping installation in Paris using poetry to trace the different faces of Africa. That led to being funded by Meta with $35,000 for a VR film and a seed commission of £10,000 for Leeds Year of Culture in 2023, with a possibility of more funding after the delivery of the prototype, where I turned other poets into the guardians of the city and guardians of story. I mentioned these achievements for 2 reasons. One, to show the weight my name was gaining because I wrote poems and said them out loud. But 2, to touch on the entire theme that I've entered this chat on brand identity through, the golden thread. I'm fortunate enough to look back on my career now, and because of the clear intention and vision of my dream, I'm able to pinpoint a narrative, a story that tells the journey of the type of artist I am. And that's what people buy into. Yes, the poems are dope. The ideas and concepts are wild. My gumption, my liver, my gal, my audacity, it's strong, Baba. And I argue that you need all of these, but it is the story of Xabiso Vili that breaks tables and gets funding. We could spend far more than this hour dissecting what that story is, but the session isn't about me, it's about you, your story. So let's go back to that dream. Before we ever times it by 10 or 100, even then, I'm sure it still felt pretty big. I want to remind us of the question, how do you eat an elephant? The answer, one bite at a time. I can't tell you which steps to take or which bites to munch on, but our journeys are different. And I encourage you to cut it up into smaller pieces. And when people are watching, they might not see the entire elephant, but you do. And when they realize what it is, that will be the magic trick, that this entire time you're building a brand, baby, building a brand. I might show my age with that reference, building a band. But the how I mentioned earlier are just the tools of sharing your journey towards the dream. The what is a slow reveal of the dream. And better yet, if you're intentional of how you build your what, that can transform into your why. In case I haven't been clear, social media isn't the beginning or the end of your brand identity. It's a very important tool that you need to learn how to use. Yes, but what you are using it for is informed by your why. To touch on this idea of why, I think we're all familiar with what Apple makes: computers, watches, phones, but what has propelled them into such a high societal status? Simon Sinek suggests in his TED Talk that you must start with the why, then the how, then the what. It's actually a little circle, a target circle, where he has the why in the center, he has the how outside, then he has the what on the furthest ring. We can see this why in Apple's original mission statement. Apple is dedicated to the empowerment of man, to making personal computing accessible to each and every individual so as to help change the way we think, work, learn, and communicate. Steve Jobs suggested man is the true creator of change in this world. As such, he should be above systems and structures and not subordinate to them. And this is the mission statement that was almost like the guiding light for Apple. There are many companies that deal with technology, but only Apple can deliver on their why. Only you can deliver on that dream. So, with that dream in mind, what is your mission statement? Let's do another exercise inspired by Simon Sinek. Considering your dream, I want to give you some time right now to write down why it's important, why you need to accomplish it. It can be 3 short lines. It doesn't need to be an entire paragraph. So I'll give us a couple of seconds just to think about or to write down your why as I'm talking here. I don't know if you have written it down, but also you can still do this exercise after this session. So once you've got your 3 lines, we can look at your how. So how will you accomplish your why? Write down some of the necessary steps it might take and the things you would do to make your dream possible. If my why is to become the best poet in the world, because that way I can better my society. How? What is my why? My how? My how? Ooh, my wow! My how? Then becomes perhaps competing in slams and getting international recognition, going on tours. Finally, once you have your how, write down what is required, what it is, what does it look like, what does it taste like, smell like, feel like, sound like. Yeah, so if going on the international tours will get me to my why of being the best poet, to change my community, then what it looks like becomes really high-end quality content, becomes learning how to heal through the arts. And then I can start building this what that then influences the how, that then speaks back to my why. So if I leave you with nothing else today, at least I have left you with this exercise. Write down your why, write down your how, write down your what. This is the thing about weaving a golden thread through your brand identity. As long as your why stays secure, anything you do or make around it will lead directly back to your purpose. We can start to link your purpose to your brand identity. This allows a certain amount of freedom. You can collaborate, you can play and experiment. Some projects will be successful and others won't, and that's okay, because everything you're creating is aligned to the overarching narrative, to your overall story. I'm not saying the story needs to stay the same. The story and the dream will evolve as you accomplish it. It's a mountain setting you up to see all the other mountains. But 10, 15, 20 years from now, you can look back on the journey and realize that the story you were telling was a unique one. And it will show in the work and in the weight of your name. So what is the thing that links all your work together? What is the golden thread? I would say it might be your why, and how that influences your how and your what. I'd like to end with possibly how I should have begun. A brief definition of brand identity. Here we have a brand identity is made up of what your brand says, what your values are, how you communicate your product, and what you want people to feel when they interact with your company. Essentially, your brand identity is the personality of your business and a promise to your customers. We can also change customers to audience here. So, considering your why, what are you promising to your audience? Magic. Thank you for your time. We'll chat soon. Shakirah, are you there?
I am here and I'm wondering how I am going to live up to that. That was really great and inspiring.
Good, thank you so much. No, but now you go in and you tell them how they do the things. Now they want the concrete examples.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. So thank you so much for that, laying that groundwork, because it really is so important for people to be able to just understand that everything starts with the why. And so while my computer is setting up its slideshow, yeah, I'm going to be talking quite a bit about the more practical side of how we go about delivering this, this why, this how, and this what to the public. So as Ishmael has mentioned before, my name is Shakirah Dramat, and I am from that network. And today I'm going to be giving you a very short but practical guide as to how you can communicate your messages, the ones that you have discovered as you've answered those questions, to your audience. So your brand, according to Jeff Bezos, is what people say about you when you're not in the room. I absolutely love this quote because it forces us to look inward oftentimes. And the things that people could say about you are endless. You might not even realize it. It could start with something like, oh, that's such a talented poet, or that performance was so great. But it could also be something like, yeah, I've heard of her, but I wouldn't really work with her because she's a little bit unprofessional. They could say something like, I absolutely love working with this person because communicating with them is so easy. It just makes the job flow. It's effortless. They could also say something like, ugh, that person's just always with the drama. Or something as trivial as, I really wanted to book them for my wedding or my birthday or my corporate show, but I hate that they just always look a little bit messy. These are things that we often don't realize people are saying about us. But, and you at the moment might be asking yourself, Shakirah, okay, you're telling all of this, but do I really need to care about what people think about me? And as a human, probably not. I would encourage you to really not care about what others think and to just do what makes you happy. But as a brand and as a creative entrepreneur, you have to realize and accept that branding is power. It allows you to do a number of things. Branding allows you to control the narrative around your creative business, because whether you may just see yourself as, a lot of creatives I find see themselves as just the graffiti artist, or I'm just a poet, or, you know, I am Shakirah that also does poetry. Okay, I don't really do poetry, but, you know, I'm Shakirah who just does poetry. But at the end of the day, you are a creative business. And powerful, strategic, well thought out branding allows you to control the narrative around yourself. What people say about you, how they feel about you, what they think about you, what they think about your work. Branding allows you to create perceived value, which has the added benefit of increasing your rates. And I see I just spelled rates incorrectly there. But as controversial as this might be to say, the reality is that online presence and branding in other forms, which we'll go over in a little bit, does allow you to increase rates outside of just your talent. If you have a strong social media following, if you are performing for free most of your gigs, but you're constantly posting that you're performing, nobody online knows that it's for free. So people will have the perception that you are always fully booked. And so when you go in with a certain price, they'll be willing to pay it because you always look busy, you know? And that is a little bit of a controversial sort of way to think about it, but it is also the truth. And I believe in providing value, and that's just the way that the world operates. And then number 3, branding also allows you to build trust with your audience through consistency, through a certain set of rules, which we'll also go over now. And so once you give in and accept and allow yourself to realize that branding is power and it allows you to do all of these things, it will make your life and the way that you approach branding a lot easier. So in order to set you up for success, over the next few minutes and the amount of time that I have, I will go over 3 main topics. 1, the basic elements of branding. Like I said, this is very practical. So we'll look at the basic elements of branding. We'll look at the avenues that you can use to bring your brand to life. And then finally, we'll look at press kit must-haves. So number 1, I'm sure that everybody understands the value by now of a logo. Every single brand needs a logo. A logo allows people to make quick and decisive decisions about something. It allows them to easily recognize you. Oftentimes people talk about the Nike swoosh. Without that little tick on a sneaker, it's just a sneaker, and you might not necessarily be paying 2,000 Rand for it, but because it has that logo, you know that it represents something. It represents quality, it represents a certain ethos, a certain set of values, and you align with that. So the first element that every brand must have is a logo. Then from that logo, every brand must have a color palette. And you can often think for yourself, what colors resonate with me? Oftentimes when we're working with clients and we're trying to develop brands for them, from a logo to a color palette to font types, which we'll talk about in a second, we do exercises with our clients where we ask them, okay, what colors speak to you? If the feeling that you want your audience to feel when they interact with your brand were colors, what colors would they be? When I was developing the colors for my digital communications agency, I knew that I wanted to be inspired by my star sign, which is Pisces, but I also knew that I wanted something that represented fluidity, because it is a digital agency, and digital marketing or digital communications is a very fluid industry. It's always changing. Algorithms are always switching up on us. There are always new trends, and fluidity is really important. So we naturally went with a shade of blues. But then I also asked myself, okay, what colors complement blue if I wanted something else in there? If you look at PayPal as an example, all they have are shades of blues. If you look at BP, they have shades of greens and yellows, which is kind of the same thing. But then you go to a brand like Google, and they have very striking blue, red, yellow, green. All of this comes from somewhere. So far we know every brand must have a logo and must have a color palette. Then every brand must have fonts. And I'm not just talking about the fonts that is in your logo, because maybe your logo has no text at all. Maybe your logo is just a symbol. But your fonts can play a role in almost everything. From the fonts that you use in your emails, they can always be consistent. The fonts that you put in your documents, for me, it's Calibri, always. Calibri 11, always. If I really need to scale it up, the most I'll ever scale it up to is 14, and I never go higher than that. These things help you to be consistent and help you reinforce your brand's messages. So, as you mentioned, a logo, a color palette, a set of fonts. And when you're developing your set of fonts in your brand kit, you can ask yourself, okay, what is my header font going to be? Perhaps your header font is the same font that's in your logo. Then you've got a sub-header font. Then you've got a copy font. And if you perhaps are doing this by yourself, maybe developing your logo on Canva, perhaps you don't have the resources to pay a graphic designer to do this for you, you can go on Google and search font pairings or complementary fonts. And there are lots of websites that will give you examples of fonts that go really well together. Something else that plays a role in brand identity is a clear social media look and feel. I love this page, Later Media. If you want great tips on social media and just digital marketing in general, they are an incredible page to follow on social media. They also have a newsletter that you can sign up to. They're really great, so I highly recommend that. But for the purposes of this particular slide, you can see that Later Media has a very clear social media aesthetic or look and feel. A lot of people say that the Instagram aesthetic is dead in terms of having everything looking perfect and perfectly posed photos, edited nicely on Lightroom or VS Code. And while that is true, the perfect aesthetic of Instagram is dying, I guess. Having a brand look and feel does help. And it can be something as simple as, having the same design appear every now and again, or putting a similar edit on all of your photos, or doing social media hygiene checks if you don't want the headache of making sure that your Instagram feed is always perfect. Just making sure that things like your handle is exactly the same on every single platform. Don't be, Shakirah the poet on Facebook, but then be Shaq poet on Instagram, for argument's sake. You want to make sure that if your name is Shakirah the poet, it's Shakirah the poet across platforms, so that when people look for you, let's say they attended an event, they saw you on stage, they want to find you, they want to be able to quickly and easily look for you online. And the more difficult you make it for the customer to engage with you, or the audience member, or the potential fan, the faster you're going to lose them. So basic social media hygiene checks when it comes to things like this is looking at your social media handles, then your social media profile pictures, and your social media bios. I urge everyone to, after the session or when you have some time over the next few days, just go back and look at your social media and ask yourself, is this consistent enough? And is it easy for someone looking for me to see that these platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you are, Behance, whatever the case may be, do they all have something that is consistent and that is aligned, even if it's the same profile picture across all of them? Then, so in a nutshell, so far, we know that every brand must have a logo, font pairings, brand colors, standardized or sort of uniform social media look and feel. And then finally, just think a little bit about your tone of voice and language style. I know that all of you are poets, and so this is something that where you can really shine. How do you speak online? I'm going to use an example of sort of more traditional brands, if that makes sense. Some brands are very matter of fact. So as an example, they might say, you know, instead of saying something like, staying in our hotel will give you a warm and holistic feeling, and you'll wake up in the morning to beautiful sunrise and birds chirping, book with us today. Instead of saying something like that, the brand, if they are more matter of fact and they know that that is their tone of voice, they might just say something like, comfortable stays, perfect for business trips, good Wi-Fi, lots of plug points, breakfast included, book today. So they know that their tone of voice is very matter of fact. So all of the copy that they write across their website, across their social media, across their email marketing, their ads will follow a similar tone of voice. If I can just think of another example, which I actually wrote down earlier on, if a brand decides, okay, our tone of voice is more professional, let's say we're looking at a laptop brand, they might say, our laptops offer 8 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte hard drive, and I can't think of other laptop features, but they might just say, you know, we offer the following, rather than saying, this laptop is perfect to keep your hustle game strong. You know, they can, if someone, let's say a new person joined the team, or if someone was writing a press release for you about a particular performance, if they were to write in a tone that you immediately know, okay, this tone doesn't suit my brand because this is my tone of voice, it makes it easy for you to make decisions about what types of copy complements you or where copy needs to be changed. The reason all of this is really important is because it helps with consistency. And the reason consistency is important is because it helps to reinforce your brand in the customer, consumer, or fan's mind. It helps you to reinforce your brand in the audience's mind. When someone sees a post on Instagram that has your brand colors, that has your tone of voice, and they quickly scroll, because this is how we are on social media. You're not even really absorbing and consuming unless you see something really eye-catching. But what's great about all of these elements, if you have them right, is that when someone is quickly scrolling on social media or paging through something and they see an ad or an article or a photo or something relating to your brand, they will subconsciously almost already know that this belongs to you. When you see red and yellow, I feel like a lot of people will think about McDonald's without even having to see the golden arches, you know? And so it just helps people to more easily recognize your brand in places without you having to work as hard to show them that, hey, this is my Shakirah the Poet page. So yeah, having consistent logos, colors, brand tone just helps to reinforce your messages and your brand with your audience. Now I want to talk a little bit about offline branding. Remember earlier on, I made examples like, oh, this person is so unprofessional or whatever the case may be. As personal brands and as creative entrepreneurs, it can sometimes be very easy for us to forget that while we are also human beings and just people trying to live our lives, we are also brands at the end of the day. So when you are attending an event that is more of a professional setting or an event where you can really sort of network and, you know, get to know people in your industry, potentially secure some future work, offline branding plays a big role because people still do say things about you and you still do make an impression whether you realize it or not. Some of the things that play a role when it comes to offline branding is things like dress sense, characteristics, common behaviors, the customer experience, which talks about things like how difficult was it for a customer to book you? If I have a wedding and I saw you perform 2 weeks ago and I'm like, oh, you know, I really love this person. I really enjoyed their poetry. I would love to have them at my wedding. And now I DM you on Instagram, but you're taking 6 weeks to reply to me. And then by the time you reply, my wedding date is passed. You know, that customer experience is not really great. So would I refer you to my friends? Probably not. Would I come back to you to book you for my sister's wedding or my corporate gig? Probably not, because the customer experience wasn't great. Then word of mouth, and even things like email style. How do you write your emails? Are your emails easy to read, easy to understand? Same goes for WhatsApp messages when relating to work, because WhatsApp has become the new email sometimes. So just thinking about those things. And I'm not saying that you need to be conscious of this all the time. If there was one main takeaway from all of this, I think it's just to say that when you are conscious about what you want your brand to be, how you want people to perceive you, and what you want people to say about you, you can steer the narrative around your brand into exactly what is it you are trying to achieve. As an example, I'm just going to use myself here. I, for a very long time, still am, I guess, but was the digital and social media girl. I was the girl who knew everything about PR. I was the girl who knew everything about digital. And that's still how people think about me. And that was what people said about me for a long time. I am now trying to consciously change that narrative to become more of a broader South African small business entrepreneur, thought leader type person. I'm only in the beginning stages, and it does still have a long way to go. I need a lot of work, but that is a conscious shift that I'm trying to make. Becoming the digital girl was something that happened very organically because I didn't curate my brand. Now I'm moving into a space where I want to curate my brand, because when people say my name, I want them to think she knows a lot about business in South Africa. And so I will start to change my posts towards that. I will start to change my social media bios towards that. I will try to get speaking gigs at events that's not only based on marketing, but also based on broader business, because I am conscious about the way that I want to be perceived. And so even when it comes to offline branding, that's just always in the back of my mind. So when I am going to these events, I can be in control of what my narrative is. And that is what branding allows you to do, rather than just letting people say, letting people say whatever it is that they want, or just organically kind of building that perception. Okay, let's talk a little bit about communication channels. There are various different communication channels that you can use to communicate your brand and to communicate your why, your how, and your what. One of them is public relations. Public relations is often, number one, very much based on storytelling. It's very different to advertising, which is something we'll talk about in a second, but it allows you, public relations is driven by tools such as press releases, influencer engagements, and very important, non-paid media. You can have a relationship between paid advertising and public relations, but traditionally PR is non-paid. So as an example, let's say you are taking part in Open Book Fest, for argument's sake, or a big event that you really want people to know about, and you kind of want to have something written about it to try and build your media presence. You can write a short little blurb or a short little press release with a nice angle, a nice hook, and you can distribute it to all your traditional media channels. So you can send it to podcasts, you can send it to written or print media like newspapers, magazines, blogs, all of those sorts of things. You can try and send it to radio stations to ask them if they would be willing to interview you about your new poetry project or whatever the case may be. But that would be, the process for that would be for you to write a press release and then send it out to media. And then if the journalist likes your hook, likes your story, likes what you are about and what you have to say, they will call you in or they will write about you for free. Public relations influences whether your potential customers know, like, and trust you. This is why you see big brands doing things like doing a lot of charity work, doing a lot of environmental work, apart from their legal obligations. If you are making over a certain amount of money and you're a big corporation, they have legal obligations to do certain types of CSI work. But apart from that, organizations do these things so that they can have PR talkability. They want their brand to be in the media. They want people to be talking about them. So they do all of these PR-worthy type things, right? Public relations is the professional management of your brand's reputation and contributes to the story that people have about you. So if I want people to see me as Shakirah, the business guru, I should start writing opinion pieces on small businesses in South Africa, on hiring your first employee in South Africa, on taxes for small businesses, Shakirah's insight into the future of small business in South Africa. And I can send that to publications to see if anyone would be willing to publish it, because that, again, helps me. It helps me to control the narrative. It is my professional management of my reputation, if that is what I'm trying to achieve. Then public relations also helps businesses tap into global and societal conversations that are relevant to the brand. So as an example, if I were, let's say something happened in the country and I wanted to make commentary on it, I could then comment on it through traditional PR methods. And I could comment on things that are within sort of my area of expertise. Okay, I'm worried about time, so let me move on. Okay, advertising, very different to PR. What I do quickly want to say, just to tie those links together, is that some big brands and some broadcasting organizations, like your radios, like your magazines or your newspapers, they will offer you something like, okay, cool, if you have 5,000 Rand to pay for an ad, we can give you a free article that is PR driven. And it's kind of like an added value. So sometimes these two do go hand in hand, but traditionally they are separated. So advertising is very different to PR. Public relations, okay, perfect. Ishmael just says, don't worry about time. That makes me feel a lot better. Public relations is more about building long-term reputation, right? It's something that happens ongoing. It's something that you kind of do consistently, whereas advertising is more focused on a particular product, a particular set of messages, or a particular event. As an example, this set of workshops that Hear My Voice is now doing, they have been posting ads about it on their Instagram, right? Because there is an expiry date, it's a new product, if you were to think about it in that way. So it's very direct. It has a very clear purpose. We want to get people to attend this particular event, so we are advertising it. Whereas PR, sticking with the Hear My Voice example, would be more like, Hear My Voice is an organization that consistently and continuously contributes to the poetry community in South Africa. And someone would write a press release about that. I have done so for Hear My Voice in the past myself. Someone would write a press release about that and then send it out. So as you can see, they're very different. The one is pushing an event. The other is more about just controlling the narrative around the brand. I hope that helps to sort of differentiate the two. Okay, also advertising relies on creative positioning, catchphrases, and helps to ensure that products resonate with customers. Okay, I kind of went over this already, but sort of just to recap, advertising is very focused and direct, and you can advertise on platforms such as radio, TV, newspapers, billboards, paid online ads, etc. And then, sorry, just quickly, just something to add to that. PR is often an article, a longer form piece of content, whereas advertising is usually sort of just like a design with a few words on it. I'm sure you guys can see it in your mind. Okay, now we're moving on to my area of expertise, which I'm quite excited about. But don't push people to where you want to be, but meet them where they are at. And where people are at in 2022 is online. right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about the next communication channel. We went through PR, we went through advertising. Now let's talk about digital. Just a quick overview of online and digital channels. You've got emailers. So this comes directly into your email box. I'm sure everyone has heard from Megan from Mr. D or Becky from Bolt. I'm sure a lot of people have gotten emails from those people. But that's what I mean when I'm talking about emailers. You can sign up to emailers. Almost every brand has them. It's a great way to speak directly to your audience and to also build a database of your community and their contact details, so that if in some crazy apocalyptic event, Instagram and Facebook were to completely shut down, I see someone recognizes Becky from Bolt. If in some crazy sort of like apocalyptic events, Instagram and Facebook were to be shut down, at least you can still reach your audience through their email addresses, right? So emailers is really great. Another online channel, of course, you've got your paid online ads. These are your sponsored posts on your Twitters, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Instagram, etc. Google even, YouTube even. Then, of course, websites. I'm sure everyone knows what a website is. Blogs that are often on websites. And then portfolios. As a poet, you could have a portfolio on YouTube. You don't necessarily have to have a YouTube channel. You could just use YouTube as your portfolio, where you have a set of 5, 6, or 7, or whatever the case may be, even 3 really high quality, good videos that you can send to someone that might want to see your style and suss your vibe before they decide to book you. Behance is also another platform that people use for portfolios, more driven towards the visual arts kind of space. And then, of course, you've got your social media channels. And your social media channels could be YouTube if you were to use it as a social media channel and not only as a portfolio. But then we've got all of the others, including your TikToks and et cetera, et cetera. Cool. Now, let's talk about content and content marketing. And as a poet and a creative entrepreneur, any type of personal brand, this is really important. Content is king, and if Bill Gates said it, it has weight. So the definition, content marketing is a marketing technique of creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and acquire a clearly defined audience. There are so many elements in this definition that we can talk about, with the objective of driving profitable customer action. Now, for you as a poet, you may not necessarily immediately be thinking about getting bookings through content marketing. Maybe you just want to build your brand so that your name can have weight and it can break tables in boardrooms. But whatever your objective, content marketing is king, especially in 2022. I watched this really great video the other day by this creator that I often watch. I can't remember his name right now, but he said the demand, while the competition in the content creation world is increasing every day and is becoming more and more difficult to stand out in every single day, the demand for good content and good quality content is also increasing every single day, which opens up a world of possibilities. Now, as a poet, you don't necessarily have to be creating content all the time. You don't have to decide, okay, this is going to be an I fell into this trap. This is going to be the content I'm going to write. This is going to be what my topic is going to be about. I have to have a content day on a Tuesday from 3 to 6 p.m. I'm going to film TikToks and do little dances and, say things on the camera. But that can become very stressful. Another approach that you could do is just documenting your life. And when I say your life, I'm talking about your professional life. You can decide the areas of your life that you want to show, but documenting your process, I have a video that I took. I was laying on the beach and I was writing in my journal, and I literally just put the camera there and I recorded like 3 minutes of me writing in my journal, sped it up, added some soothing music to it, and boom, there we go. Video with a little caption that could talk about anything I wanted it to talk about. When you are performing, ask someone to record your performance and chop it up if you want to, or post a full video if you want to. If you are at the performance alone and you don't have a friend or a partner or parents or whatever the case may be that can record your video, don't be shy to ask someone in the audience or someone who works at the establishment, someone who organized the event. Take a tripod and put it on the table, prop your phone up against a little cup or can or something, but just make sure that you are capturing your process, capturing your performances and putting that online. But content marketing is becoming more and more important on a daily basis. People are hungry for content, and there's a huge opportunity for you to feed them there. Okay. Now, let's talk about press kits, and I am nearing the end. So let's talk a little bit about press kits. Every creative entrepreneur needs press kits. Every single person. If you don't have one, you can use Canva. If you don't know Canva, it's a really great user-friendly, I say this very lightly, graphic design tool or platform. You can create awesome designs and templates and things there. So if you don't have one, you can use Canva to create it. Let's talk about a press kit checklist. High quality and high res photos. Now, while you may have high quality photos, let's say you had a photographer take some photos of you and they sent them to you and you just use them for digital and in your press kits and they look good and they're professionally shot. That's amazing. But also make sure that you have photos that are bigger than 2 megabytes. Yes. Make sure that you have photos that are bigger than 2 megabytes for you to send to print media, for you to send to people who want to print posters. Having photos that look good but are only in the KB type size range is not good enough. You need to have good looking, high quality, but also high res photos in your press kits. This little picture on the side over here, I must admit, is not my favorite example of a press kit, but it was the best photo I could find or picture I could find to fit perfectly on my slide. So I went ahead and used it. But it does give you a nice overview of what a press kit could potentially look like. Then once you have your high quality photos, make sure that you have a short bio, make sure that you have a long bio. You do not have to put both of them in your EPK when you are sending it to someone who is asking for your press kit. But make sure that you have them on hand so that you can very easily switch them out, because some people just want a little short piece that they can use to introduce you, where some people potentially writing an article about you, or whatever the case may be, might want a longer bio. Make sure to include, brag about yourself, shamelessly own your accomplishments, include your achievements, your awards, your notable performances, even things that you might not think are notable. I promise you that other people will think that they are. So include them there. Even if you're just starting out and it means that you were named best poet at your high school, doesn't matter. Add it there, you know. Okay, then make sure that you have up-to-date contact information and that you have clearly communicated what your preferred method of communication is. If you are someone that does not like to answer the phone, when you put your phone number, put the words WhatsApp next to it in brackets. If you prefer that people email you, when you put your email address, put in brackets, preferred method of communication next to it so that it's clear to the person how they should contact you. Make sure that you have video links. This is very important for poets. I would not normally put this in a press kit checklist, but for poets, video links of your performances. If you have not yet had a public performance, record yourself performing in your bedroom, somewhere with a nice background, and put that there, upload it to YouTube, make it private, whatever the case may be, on a Google Drive. Just make sure that you have video links of your performances and what you could potentially do for someone. Then your social media links. I have bigger following there in brackets because I'll get there in a second. Make sure that you have a fact sheet about the type of services that you offer and then your general notes. These 3 points kind of go together. So the reason I have bigger following in brackets is because, number one, every press kit must have social media links. Doesn't matter if you have 10 followers or 100 followers. But if you have 3,000, 10,000, 15,000, 7,000 type followers, you can get paid for being an influencer outside of only getting paid as a poet. So keep that in mind. Have your poetry rates, then have your influencer rates. And they don't necessarily have to be the same. If someone books you for a gig and you have a nice social media following, doesn't necessarily mean that you are automatically going to be an influencer for that brand. Also, if they want you to be posting consistent content on your social media outside of the event that they have booked you for, consider negotiating influencer rates with them, okay? Then a fact sheet about the type of services that you offer. This is important because I am not a poet. And before I was introduced to Hear My Voice, all I thought that poets did, and I'm being very honest here, just for the sake of learning, is recite poetry. I didn't know that poets can be used for advertising, that poets can be used to create virtual experiences, as we just heard with my previous speaker. I didn't know that poets play such big roles. So don't assume that just because you are in the poetry circle, that your potential customer also knows the extent of your service offering. So break it down for them. Let them know, hey, yes, I can read poetry at your wedding, but you can also book me to write a little ad for your radio jingle, you know, or you can book me to, I don't really know how else you can apply your skill to other areas, but try and showcase to the person how it is that you can add value to them outside of just reciting poetry or writing poetry. And then general rates, the reason I have with a footnote next to it is because with creative services, skills and bookings are not always straightforward. Sometimes a client wants to book you to do a multitude of things, right? So you could put there, okay, it's 2,500 Rand to book me to perform for 1 hour, for argument's sake. But you know that if the client were to come to you with like 6 bookings plus a little TV gig plus something else, you give them a discount on the individual rates because you want to create sort of like a package. So I always encourage creative entrepreneurs and artists to put a little footnote where they have their rates in their press kit that says these rates are just a general guideline. But if you would like to discuss more extensive projects, contact me and we can negotiate it on a project basis. And I think that that is the last slide of my presentation. Yes, it is. So with that, I'd like to just say thank you so much to Hear My Voice for having me and to you guys for listening. And I'm happy to take questions. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Shakirah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was really so insightful, Xabiso and Shakirah. So much has been learned. So we are going to allow people to raise their hands and ask questions. And in the meantime, while people are gathering their courage to raise their hands, there's a few questions from the Q&A that I'm going to ask to both of you. You just decide which one who would like to answer that, and maybe I'll just direct the questions to particular people, or rather panelists. So an anonymous attendee asks, does this still work? All publicity, good and bad, is good publicity. Not that it's prevalent in the poetry community, but what if we had Ntiki Mazwai, who was an active poet, with the controversy work for the poet? I'm first gonna ask Shakirah, and then I'll give it to you, Xabiso, as a poet, and answer it as a poet. Yeah, Shakirah, go ahead.
I am not sure how to answer this question. I think that, okay, I'm going to answer this question twofold. One, good or bad, your name is still top of mind. People are talking about you, right? But then we also live in a world where accountability is becoming increasingly important, as it should be. And so depending on what it is that you have done to stir up the bad press, it can be extremely detrimental to your career. So I think if I were to give it a hard answer, I would say that I no longer agree with that statement. Yeah.
Word. And I mean, it's also, it's bad, like all publicity is good publicity, like up until it isn't, right? Like up until it's like, okay, like enough now. And I also think it's just about what are you trying to build with your brand. Are you trying to be the controversial Nsikima's wife? Because like that's her brand, right? Like she is like her selling point is the controversy, and that's what gets her the articles and the open letters. And then there's a particular sect of organizers that book her, but then there's also a particular sect of organizers that don't. So yeah, know where the limits are and also decide what your purpose is.
Thank you for that. The other question is also from an anonymous attendee. Do we have known PR companies or agencies that manage poets like they are for actors, etc.? Xabiso, do you know of any?
Ooh, man, I have searched. I have searched. I think there's like some interesting things happening, but not like right off the top of my head. It's either you're gonna go to one that manages actors, one that manages models, and then you swing it in there, and you're like, oh yeah, also do poetry. But there aren't any right now that I think of that specifically focus on poetry. Also because it's the market is one that we have to create and are constantly creating and having to tell people what it is we do and how we can do it and how we influence them. Like Shakirah had mentioned, that we're constantly kind of having to explain to people the many things that we can do and how it would like work in different scenarios. And so we're still needing a lot of those kind of organizations to catch up and to be like, oh, this is what's happening.
Shakirah?
So I don't know of any that focus specifically on poets, but I just want to say two things that I don't think directly relate to the question. But one, major gap in the market. So if anybody loves poetry and also has that set of experiences, I mean, there's a business idea right there. And then number two, just to say that while right now, let's call them the traditional audiences, might not necessarily know how to apply poetry to the business world or, those sorts of things, just keep educating people, keep educating the market, keep educating the corporates, keep showing them what you can do, because we have seen in the last few years that graffiti, something that used to be considered vandalism, is now such a big demand for corporates. Everybody wants to work with a graffiti artist. And if a few years ago you had to tell a brand, listen, you can pay a graffiti artist to create some incredible advertising content for you, I don't think that they would have thought that was possible. So just keep pushing and keep educating, the market, and they'll definitely start to see the value. I know that it's not necessarily fair on this particular cohort of poets that is around right now, but think about how much easier it will be for the next group and the group after that. So yeah, to answer the question, I don't know of any, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to give the floor to Mandi Vundla, who's raised her hand to ask a question. Please unmute and go ahead and ask your question, Mandi.
Thanks, Ishmael. Thank you so much, Xabiso and Shakirah. Shakirah, I'm wondering, what are the guidelines for quoting for paid social media or influencer work, right? I know fundamentally it's your followers and possibly your reputation, but I always really kind of struggle with that. Like, what would you say the foundation of that quote should be based on?
That's such a great question. Something in me is saying that there is like some sort of math guideline that exists that I feel like people were using a year or two ago. But I would say, number one, I think the rise in micro influencing is a huge potential for people. So even if you have like 3,000 followers a few years ago, that would not have been seen as a lot. But if you have 3,000 followers that is exactly in line with what it is that the brand is wanting to achieve, you are already so far ahead of people who have, 30,000 followers, but maybe they kind of just are what we call a coat hanger. So they post and advertise almost anything. And then I think about not only just the posting itself. So you could say, listen, it's 1,000 Rand or 850 Rand per post. I mean, depending on your following, if you want it to be 8,500 Rand, if you had a lot more followers, like you can decide on that rate. But apart from just thinking about what it costs for you to post something on your social media, think about the work that goes into it. Do you need to research? Do you need to take time recording? Do you need to edit a video? Do you need to write a script and send it to the client for approval? So think about all of those things before just deciding on your posting rates, because I think it's not just about posting. And if the brand is challenging your fees, you can go back to them and say, listen, this is what is going into this particular thing. This is the amount of hours of work it's taking, and then this is the reach that you're going to get out of it. So yeah, I think maybe also to help, I can share just some sort of numbers that I have of previous influencers that we've worked with. So I've worked with influencers that have upwards of 150,000 followers that are charging like 9,000 Rand for an Instagram post. Oftentimes PR companies will negotiate. I'm not going to lie, I am one of those people always trying to negotiate. But they will try to negotiate. So they might say, okay, cool, I'll pay you the 9 grand for your one post, but then I want like 2 Insta stories with it to be posted on this date and this date as an example. Then I've also worked with smaller influencers that will charge around 1,000 Rand per post. Sometimes people will say, okay, if you can make it 1.5, I'll post on my TikTok and on my Instagram. And those people maybe have around your 10,000-ish follower mark. And then maybe on TikTok, they're at like 25K. Then there are some people that charge 350 Rand when they have like 5,000 followers. It's a very unregulated market. I'm literally just sharing with you right now. These are actual figures that we've actually paid influencers that we've worked with over time. But because this industry is so unregulated, you'll find that this influencer of 5,000 followers and this influencer of 5,000 followers, this one is charging 350 Rand, but this one is charging 2,500, you know? So yeah, I don't know if that helps. And I wish I could give you like a standardized formula, but that's, yeah, as much as I can sort of share for now. If you want, you can maybe like send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email with your social media links and I can tell you how much I think you should be charging. Yeah. Maybe that would
Thanks. That would actually be quite helpful. I'll do that.
Xabiso, do you want to put any input in that, or you're good? All right, awesome. Going on to another anonymous attendee. If everything is online, where do poets go to attract the right audience? And how important is publishing? And I'm assuming this is your traditional publishing of a book, or into journals, etc. Or is it now more about performance? Xabiso, I think you're perfect to answer that.
This question, man, there isn't a right answer to it. The formula is wild. The formula is all over. We can look at Rupi Kaur, and you know how they utilized Instagram to then develop a market of millions to share. But also, again, dependent on the type of audience you're trying to access, there's, you know, a limited amount of publications that will publish Rupi Kaur's work. And again, there's still like a lot of publications that receive work and like still like share that work, and that, you know, that is a valid path. But again, it also accesses a certain type of audience. There's a lot of TikTok poetry that's happening right now, and that's also, you know, how consistent are you? What is the content? Who are you reaching? But also, like, what is the staying power of like the TikTok video as well? Instagram, TikTok, YouTube videos is like, you know, a platform that I really use to get my name out there, how I got a lot of like my own clients, my own gigs. But again, like for me, it's about the diversification. So what are the many different platforms that you can use, and where does your own poetry sit best and best represent itself, you know? And so all different platforms will have different different ways of then sharing the work, right? Like very short, punchy poems are there on TikTok, are there on Instagram. You can put up your longer pieces onto YouTube, like your more well-written pieces you can send out to publications. And again, I still think that all of these spaces have merit, like an add weight to that bio, add weight to that profile, add weight to that portfolio. And I also think it's around thinking creatively around what you want to achieve. So as much as you're using all of these platforms, what is the overarching goal? What is the outcome that you want? Because then that kind of determines which are the platforms that you use and which are the platforms that you don't.
Thank you so much, Xabiso, for that. There's another question.
Sorry, so can I quickly add something to that?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to also say that I think taking time to also engage with communities around what it is that you do is very important. So not only just posting your content, but also making time to just engage within those communities on other people's accounts, making sure that these engagements are super meaningful and real and not just kind of like spam, but engaging is also a great way to build community around your own brand.
Thank you so much, Shakirah. Ntobeli asks, can we ask the city newspapers to send us pre-questions that will help us write the article? Because it is a struggle. And Shakirah, I think that one is definitely for you.
Yes, you can definitely ask. You can ask. So artists and creatives often see publications and radio and all of these things as these like high beings that sort of control things and that you are at their mercy, but you provide value just like they provide value. If you are writing a piece that's going in that newspaper, you are helping them fill space and helping them to provide value to their audience. So you are able to negotiate, you are able to ask questions in advance, you are able to ask for guidelines and tell them that you don't understand the assignment or whatever the case may be. So just, yeah, 100%, you can definitely ask them.
Thank you for that. Ashley Moyo, you've raised your hand. You can go ahead and unmute and ask a question.
All right. Thank you, Shakirah. Thank you, Xabiso. All right. So my question was basically along the lines in regards to branding on social media. If let's say, for instance, you have like a career path, which is also something you want to pursue. So just for question's sake, you a poet, right? And then you have a business in real estate, right? So when you want to post these two things, do you use the same social spaces, or it like reduce the value of your branding? So for instance, would you then focus then on just using, for the real estate side, just use LinkedIn and those business associated connections, and then for like social media you use your Instagram and so forth? How would you work if you're trying to, because I understand with other things like voiceover, with voiceovers and so forth, it's easier to integrate into your brand. But then if it's like something that's so distant, how then do you manage it?
My first instinct is to combine them. It's like be the real estate poet, you know. And I'm already seeing videos of this like poet being like, and over here we have. I think that really becomes like an exciting selling point. And then when you're on stage, they're like, ah, yeah, that's the real estate. That's the real estate poet. So that would be like my first instinct, because also I'm thinking around just around like that brand identity. What is the thing that like makes you as the poet stand out? What is the thing that makes you as the real estate agent kind of stand out? And I think also kind of like speaking to personality of the brand. So look, if the brands are completely like opposite, like if the personalities are completely different, then of course separate the things, you know. Have the thing for the real estate agent, have the thing for the poet, because maybe they don't communicate to each other and maybe there's a clash there. But if there's a similar personality that can merge, then I wouldn't see a problem with then combining them, right? Because the brand identity still remains coherent. The brand identity still remains consistent. Yes, the things that you do might be different. Maybe over here, you're showing the house. Maybe over there, you're showing a performance. But I still think that there's still a possibility for a conversation. There's still a possibility for merger. That's my gut feeling. I don't know, Shakirah. What do you think?
Firstly, love the idea of the real estate poets. I feel like you'd sell a lot of houses that way. So best practice, unfortunately, I'm going to have to challenge you a little bit there, Xabiso. Best practice is that they should be separated. However, as a human being, in my personal opinion, and not like the marketing expert, I really love the notion and the idea of just like challenging the status quo and showing people that, listen, yes, I sell houses, but I'm also a bomb poet. And like those two things can exist at the same time. Because I feel like people online have become very sort of, when they're looking at a fashion feed, they want to only see fashion. When they're looking at like a momfluencer feed, they only want to see like baby content. When they're looking at, hear my voice, they only want to see like poetry content, whatever the case may be. And people have just become very spoiled in that sense. But I do think that there is, if you really want to build a personal brand around yourself and say, listen, I am Ashley the poet and Ashley the real estate agent, you can do that. And just challenge that status quo. It is going to be a little bit harder because people are used to seeing niches. If you go anywhere online, people talk about niching down. I personally don't enjoy it, but it's like you need to be niche down. So that is best practice, but I do also believe that there is room for certain warriors to stand up out of the crowd and be like, I'm a human being and I can be multifaceted. So yeah, there we go.
All right, thank you so much. I will definitely, and if it doesn't work out, I'm coming back as a reference point to this workshop. That Xabiso and Shakirah said that I should go as a real estate poet.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And while we're still speaking of niche markets, right? Tando Metamorphosis asks, how would you scale up a brand that is in a niche market to increase reach and marketability and sales? Shakirah, maybe you can start.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is what does scale mean to you? Are we talking millions of people? Are we talking hundreds of people, thousands of people? Because if we're talking hundreds of thousands of people buying your product or consuming what it is that you're creating, I think that every niche, there is something for every kind of crazy and weird in this world. There is a market for it. I can guarantee you that. You just have to find that community online and you can definitely scale in doing that. And I think, again, it just comes back to the question that the person asked earlier on about how do I grow within the poetry space and the advice about finding these online platforms, but then also engaging within that niche. I think that's a good place to start. And then I think just expanding from there, because once you're in the rabbit hole, of poetry, real estate agents, you'll find that, hey, there's actually like a couple more other people that are doing this somewhere in the world. And then once you're in that space, you'll kind of just find other people in that community. So I think just finding your communities online, seeing where they are, testing the markets, and then using those communities and piggybacking off them to expand. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that question of scale is tricky because it can mean like a lot of different things. My immediate thought went to this idea is the 4,000 fans theory, right? That like all you need are like the dedicated 4,000 fans, and those will be the people that give you an entire career. But perhaps you're trying to get more than those 4,000 fans, which then I think, yeah, it becomes about that practice that Shakirah is mentioning around engaging the communities, around also like finding the hashtags that you can almost like also rally rally around. I think, again, it comes back to like just proper practice, right? Because I think quite often we search for the moment where we will go viral without realizing that like there's been like this consistency of steps and refining of content that has gone into then possibly a video going viral, or maybe it wasn't, maybe it was just fluke. But to be able to build up that audience, there is like that consistency of releasing work, there is that consistency of using the hashtags, there is that consistency of voice, so people do know who and what they're following, and so if they share the work, then I don't know if it's okay, yeah, and I was wondering if I was still there. Yeah, consistency of sharing the work, and then also people being able to share your work and know that what they share to the people to whom they share will come back to that profile and find the thing that they shared, you know. It isn't a boom trick and it's a magic trick and then the thing happens.
Thank you so much, Xabiso. So we are out of time. However, there are like 3 questions left. I hope panelists do not, hopefully you don't have any other engagements going on, if you don't mind, for us to just answer these last 3 questions. Apologies. So there's a question here from the chat: how to deal with rejections? Should you continue pursuing the very same brand that rejected you, or just move along? And I'm assuming this is in relation to, when you do applications, etc., etc. So just to answer that from our sense, right, from another angle, from the organization angle, from when Hear My Voice started, we applied to almost every possible opportunity, right? And we constantly got rejections. Number one, most likely because we were unknown, right? We had not had any type of track record, and yeah, just no one knew us, and we constantly got rejected. And today, the same people who were rejecting us are coming back to us to ask us to do some work for them, to partner with them, right? So we just continued doing what we do. We found other ways and other means to actually do what we want to do, and eventually the same people who were rejecting us came back and be like, okay, we would like to work with you now. And of course, now you're going to get us at a premium, right? And secondly, right, as an organization that offers a whole lot of opportunities to poets around the country, right? We have multiple opportunities that are open, such as the Mobility Fund, such as the poetry retreats. And unfortunately, we don't have enough resources to support every poet, right? So out of 150 to sometimes 300 applications, we can only choose 2 or 3. So a lot of people will often get rejected multiple times. But then I did a little project, right? I literally sat down, went through all the various applications that we have put up over the couple of years. And I realized that there's actually some people who've been applying since our first open call for any type of opportunity, who eventually got accepted 5 years later, right? So from my end, from Hear My Voice's end, we always say, do not give up, right? Continue. It has nothing to do with you. Most likely what the brand is looking for is aligned with something that will eventually align with who you are and the application that you have put forth. And speaking of that, right, there is a workshop in this series specifically catered for proposal writing. So make sure you do attend these workshops every day from this whole week at 6 p.m. Yeah, so back to the panelists. Xabiso, since you already still on, please go ahead and ask this. And I know you've experienced this often as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to add on that, right? It is a rejection game. You're gonna get a lot more rejections than you get acceptances. And unfortunately, you got to grow the hard skin about it. But the thing is, right, usually these call outs will come out once a year. If they have more funding, they'll come out twice a year. You as a poet need to still be working that year. And when it comes out the following year, you as a poet, like your bio needs to have grown the following year, and it probably would have grown the following year. So when you apply, the next time you stand more of a chance of getting it, right? Not to say that you will get it. And after like 3 or 4 years of applying, now you know their language so well. Now you've had a proposal that you've done like 3 times that you've refined. Like eventually you're gonna get it. And unfortunately, it's also a thing of when it comes to applications that like the entry point is so difficult. It took me like 5-6 years of rejections before I got my first acceptance. And then after that, it kind of like becomes a door that opens because you start to like master the language, you start to know like what applications want, but then also how to fit your thing into the thing. And it's truly like, it's a game of refining and getting the nose. But the nose won't stay nose, especially if you keep trying and keep growing and keep improving. And then eventually, like Ishmael was saying, one day you'll even forget you were applying to that one and apply to another one. And then that one will actually lead you to meeting the person who then personally invites you to one. Like it's a numbers game and you gotta play the numbers.
Thank you for that, Xabiso. Shakirah, do you have any insight on that?
Same. Also, that doesn't only just the getting over the fear of rejection, or doesn't only just apply to applying for funding or working with brands. It applies to number one, any area of life, but also number two, just the area of entrepreneurship in general, which is what we're all in as personal brands and poets, So I think, the more comfortable you get with rejection, the more unstoppable you'll be in your career.
All right, thank you so much. And then the last 2 questions. This one is, I believe, more directed to Xabiso, right? I have just one question about publishing a poetry book. Is it advisable to do self-publishing, or is it better going with professional publishers? What is the difference between the 2 publishing streams?
The age-old question, okay? The age-old question. So self-publishing, you'll probably end up paying for that printing. So you have to be ready to take on the costs of that. I also advise self-publishing if you know you have an audience that will then also buy your product, so that you can make up that cost, because you're going to be doing a lot of selling at open mics. You're going to be doing a lot of selling out of your booth. Also because what do they call it? Distribution is expensive. If you say, for example, sell a book for 150 and the profit you make from that book is 100 Rand, as soon as you look into distributors that will get you into your exclusive books and your bigger bookstores, you will make about 2 Rand profit by the end of that, And I suppose that's a good segue into traditional marketing, because traditional marketing takes on that cost, right? It will alleviate all of the costs. It will get you distributed. It has a much wider reach and a bigger audience. But also it's like finding a publisher is also tricky, because like your name needs to be known, and like they kind of need to know that you might have a market, or like the quality of your work needs to be like really of a high standard. And that also comes in with the rejection game, right? Like many books from your classics like speak of like 50, 60, hundreds of rejections before they got accepted by a publisher. So that also takes a longer time. And also like just generally within like literature space, quite often like the traditional like published books are regarded in higher regard, and so you're more likely to get like awards through those or get invited to certain festivals. But also there's kind of a shift in that thinking And it's possible if you have the energy, if you have the time, perhaps you have the team to really push the marketing on that self-publication. And also there's a lot of like poets who started self-publishing and actually grew into their own publishing houses themselves. So there's like also like a lot of opportunity there. You just gotta decide. You weigh the pros and you weigh the cons.
Thank you for that. I don't know if you want to give any input, Shakirah. However, there is a technical question here specifically directed to you. So how can I restore my Instagram profile after it has been hacked, considering it was a host site for a lot of my professional activity, throwbacks and current content in between perhaps?
Ish. Guys, that is a sad state of affairs. Unfortunately, it's, yeah, it's not an easy thing. We recently lost a client's page, recently, I mean, a few months ago, and this is a big brand, national brand, and we lost their Instagram accounts. And it took us weeks and weeks and weeks of persevering and using the owner, the CEO's contacts, who are the CEOs of other companies who knew the heads of Meta Africa to be able to help us. But even with all those connections and resources behind it, it was a huge mission. We eventually got it back because we found someone who was able to assist, but I mean, it took a long time. And I've, worked with multiple people who have lost their Instagram accounts. It's not an easy thing, unfortunately. You can go the underground route if you want to and pay a hacker to hack it back, but I would not recommend that, because once you get your account back, Meta will know and pick up that someone tampered with it, and you will most likely be shadow banned or banned. But there is a website that you can go to. It is, I think it's, I want to say business.facebook.help. Let me just check. Yeah, but there is a website that you can go to and you can fill out a form. And I would recommend filling out that form every day, every second day, like all the time, nonstop, emailing the Facebook and or the Meta support, Instagram support. But this is a huge issue. Yeah, and unfortunately, it is not one that I have the answer to. I just quickly want to find the help URL for you. Yeah, so it is, I just want to check if it's loading the right one. business.facebook.com/help. Just check that out. You'll see there are lots of options for troubleshooting and support, and yeah, hopefully something will work for you. I'm sorry and good luck.
Thanks for that. And the final question, Kwanele Nyembe has his hand up. You can go ahead and ask a question.
Sorry, before you ask a question, I gave you URL wrong. Sorry, it's facebook.com/business/help. I'm going to drop it in the chat.
Thank you so much for that, Shakirah. Kwanele?
Thank you very much. Hi to everybody. My question is directed to Xabiso, but Shakirah can weigh in as well. In the podcast that you did, the interview that you did prior with, which was the Poet Speak into podcast, you spoke about how you kind of discovered your work in hindsight, and there was some thread that was common between your work because it built on top of the work that you had been doing until you discovered that there was this invisible thread that was kind of sewing everything together. My question is, how was the process in climbing and reaching to the top of the mountain before you actually realized that this is a conceptual framework for my work, and what are the challenges that you face in that process before you discovered what it is that embodies or is the umbrella for your work, and how did you handle that?
Hey, Baba, you're following the work, dog. Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned today, one of the things that I was lucky with is that from like already a very young age, before I even started my poetry career, I had set up that long-term goals list of like in terms of like where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And so like in starting doing that and already like doing the performances when I was starting out and like, you know, jumping into like the word and sound slams and doing the open, like the spoken sessions, open mics, like back in like 2013, 2014, I already had like this bigger vision of where I wanted to go. And so I didn't realize that then writing this work and aiming for the vision that I would find this thread, right? I was just trying to write like the highest quality work. I was trying to, because like one of the things on that 10-year goal list was like become the best poet in the world, but also like build infrastructure for poetry. And so like as much as I was like going into like the slams and like the open mics, I was like using those like to gain leverage, like I said, to be able to one day go to the city of Johannesburg and be like, give me space so I can train poets. I mean, that's still a dream. It's still gonna happen, but we're gonna get there. And so like I was always raising like the quality of the work, but also being like really honest and truthful with myself and the work that I was making and the work that I was dealing with, right? So from Eating My Skin, which was the album, and dealing like with my own kind of, you know, like relationship to race, to then Black Boy B, the one-man show, which then like led to Laughing in My Father's Voice, which, you know, like as much as I was looking at race in Black Boy B, I was also looking at inheritance, and that kind of leaked into Laughing in My Father's Voice, and these inheritances then leak into these other projects around storytelling, about ancestry, magical realism. And I think this happens quite naturally because you as a poet know what you like, and there are genres that you enjoy, and there's a thing that you go through. And so it's really important to kind of reach those moments on top of the mountain and look back and be like, okay, cool, what have I gone through? And then once you're there and you know what that kind of thread is, I think then like it's then a question going forward is like, how do I more carefully craft and how do I more carefully curate this thread, you know? But yeah, I don't think it's an easy thing, but I think it's a possible thing. And I think like the easiest way is to think of yourself like 20 years from now and like ask yourself, what do you want that story to be? So what is the story up until this point? 20 years from now, what do I want the story to be? And then I think that really gives like a more considered curation of any poet's career. I think quite often we just jump onto stage, willy-nilly, is this thing dope? Am I gonna get the snaps? But again, it's like, you know, you're building, you know, I was listening to a thing when Ishmael asked me to do this thing. I was listening to a thing about actors and around like John Gani and how John Gani isn't necessarily remembered as his character, whereas like so many South African actors are remembered as their character. And quite often I think that if you don't carefully craft your career, you can become a poet that is remembered for that poem, right? As opposed, so you'll be like, the boogeyman, you know, you'll be Black Boy B. Whereas if you know, kind of carefully crafted, you can then still be, Xabiso Vili, who wrote the boogeyman, who wrote Black Boy B. And I think that's what that vision offers when you're standing on top of that mountain.
Thank you so much, Xabiso. Shakirah, do you have any additions to that? All right,
No.
awesome. Before I give you the floor to just say your last closing statements, I'd just like to remind everyone that these workshops are ongoing for the rest of the week. So tomorrow we have financial literacy and facilitated by Lebu Mashile, right? So all your questions on how much you need to charge, etc., those will be answered tomorrow. So by now, Lebu Mashile is one of the legends of South African spoken word poetry. And as soon as someone wants to book her, they know exactly how much the minimum they'll need to charge, right? And she'll be explaining how she got about getting to that point in her career, as well as all the nitty-gritties of what an invoice is, how to quote, how to send in all these various financial related details to clients, etc. Even taxing as well, because it's something that is often overlooked when it comes to the poetry industry. And this is someone who has made poetry a full-on career over a lot of years. So it's going to be very knowledgeable. And then on Wednesday, the Center for Creative Arts will kick off their workshop series with understanding funding. And on Thursday, it'll be proposal writing. On Friday, it's arts administration. And then on Saturday, it'll end off with tools for multimedia production. So we are really giving you all the tools to turn yourself into a fully fledged business, right? And all these workshops are taking place at 6 p.m. Those who have registered for all the sessions, you would have received the links already. Alternatively, these online sessions will be broadcast later on soon, possibly in the next month or so, onto the various social media platforms, such as the Center for Creative Arts Facebook page, YouTube page, as well as the Right to Speak page and the Hear My Voice page, as well as other partners as well. So this will be available publicly for you to consume on a later date. The presentations that we've seen here today will also be shared to you as well. And when we do rebroadcast this, we will post up links for the download of those sessions. Thank you so much to everyone for attending today. Thank you to Right to Speak. Thank you for the Goethe Institute, to UNIC for enabling this whole Right to Speak initiative to take place. Yeah, Xabiso, closing comment?
Yeah, man, I don't I don't know if there's anything else to say. I suppose it's just, you know, believe in the story, share the story. I think that's what people like are drawn to. Like there's ways of making the story look good, but know what that story is. And I think that's really the powerful thing that will draw anybody to your brand.
Thank you so much, Xabiso. Shakirah?
Yeah, I really love that. And I think also just knowing that it is okay to switch up your brand at some point if you feel like it no longer represents you. You know, you can run with something, a certain logo, a certain color palette, a certain social media aesthetic for, you know, a couple of years or whatever the case may be, and you may realize this is actually not who I am anymore, and this doesn't necessarily represent me. And it's okay to change. Don't feel boxed in by what you have previously created or the box that the world has put you in. And yeah, branding is a great tool for you to just tell that story in any way that makes sense for you. So yeah.
And that is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. See you again tomorrow. Cheers, cheers.
Bye.
Thank you and goodbye.